It was supposed to be just another slow morning in the Peachtree Tower marketing lounge. Amara Blake leaned against the vending machine laughing with Tasha Green, her best friend since college, both sipping lukewarm coffee and half mocking the tension of corporate life. "I swear, Tasha, our CEO is fine as hell but definitely gay," Amara said under her breath, grinning as she hit the button for another can. Malik Westbrook, beautiful suits, perfect smile, no girlfriend in sight, always too polite. Has to be. Tasha's brows shot up so high they nearly touched her braids. "Girl, you better lower your voice. Don't be talking like that down here. Sound carries in this building." Amara waved a hand, careless, playful. "Relax, he's not down here buying snacks. The man probably eats diamonds for breakfast." They both laughed, the metallic rattle of the machine echoing through the small break room, until a faint shift of air made the hairs on Amara's neck rise. It wasn't the AC, it was presence. Tasha's eyes widened before Amara even turned. Standing in the doorway was Malik Westbrook himself, 6'2" of tailored precision, charcoal vest, crisp white shirt, skin deep brown against the silver light, gaze calm and dangerous in equal measure. The laughter died in Amara's throat. Time slowed for a fraction of a second before he said, in a voice that belonged to boardrooms and late-night thoughts, "Could I have a word, Miss Blake?" Tasha straightened like she'd been caught skipping class. "Yes, sir," she blurted and practically sprinted out, leaving Amara alone with him and the quiet hum of fluorescent light. Malik stepped into the room but didn't come close, just stood there with that steady CEO stillness that made people confess things they didn't mean to say. "You work in brand partnerships, correct?" he asked, though he already knew. "Yes, Mr. Westbrook," she said quickly, heart pounding. "Malik," he corrected, eyes never leaving hers. "Since we're apparently on first-name terms now." Her throat tightened. About what I said, it was nothing, just a dumb joke trying to make Tasha laugh. "I'm not offended," he said quietly, one hand in his pocket. "I'm curious." "Curious? In why you said it?" She shook her head fast. "Because people talk nonsense when they're caffeinated and overworked." "I wasn't thinking." His expression didn't shift. "You said I'm hot." That part sounded thought out. Heat shot through her chest like a warning light. "It slipped," she said. "Slipped," he repeated, rolling the word on his tongue. "That's an interesting accident." He took a step forward, measured and smooth, the air between them tightening like a stretched wire. The scent of his cologne reached her, fresh cedar and something faintly electric. "I don't usually come down here," he said, "but I decided to confirm what I heard." She swallowed hard. "You came all the way down here for that?" He smiled slightly. "I'm thorough. This could get me fired, could it?" he asked, tilting his head. "Because of what you said or because of what you felt when you said it?" The room was suddenly too small. Her pulse raced. "I don't mix work and whatever this is." "Neither do I," he said, "until now." He stepped closer, close enough for the light to catch the edge of his jaw. "Amara Blake, do you actually think I'm gay?" Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Because if you don't, then what exactly do you think?" Her brain screamed for an exit, but her voice betrayed her. "I think you're dangerous," his mouth curved. "That's the first true thing you've said." He reached past her shoulder, pressed the small silver button on the door, and the soft click of the lock echoed louder than it should have. She felt her breath catch. "Malik," she said, "this is insane." "Probably," he said. "You can walk out if you want to." She didn't move. He lifted his hand, brushed his knuckles against her jaw, barely there. Every nerve in her body came alive. "I heard what you said," he murmured, voice lower now, "and I wondered whether I should correct you or prove you wrong." Her laugh came out shaky. "You always talk in riddles?" "Only when I'm trying to stay professional." "You're failing," she said, but her voice wasn't steady. "So are you." The next moment blurred. His hand slipped behind her neck, not forcing, just guiding, and his lips met hers. The kiss wasn't wild, it was deliberate, steady, certain. His mouth was warm, mint-soft, careful but hungry beneath the control. The world disappeared, the lights, the hum, the office beyond the glass walls. Only the taste of him existed, and the heartbeat thundering in her ears. When he pulled back, he stayed close, forehead against hers. Breath mingling. "Clarity," he said softly. "You terrify me," she whispered. "Likewise." His quiet laugh vibrated against her skin, breaking the spell just as a knock hit the door. Mr. Westbrook? Jamal's voice came through. Facilities is on line 2 about the espresso machine. Malik closed his eyes briefly like a man bargaining with fate, then stepped back, composure snapping into place. Thank you, he said. For what? She managed. For not pretending it didn't happen. He unlocked the door. My office. 5 minutes. Then he walked out calm as if nothing had happened. Amara stood frozen, heart hammering. Jamal poked his head in, grinning. You good, Amara? Fine, she said too quickly. Peachtree Tower gossip? Caffeine decisions, she replied, forcing a smile. When he left, she caught her reflection in the microwave steel. Lips flushed, eyes wide, blouse slightly off-center. She smoothed it down, tossed her coffee, and grabbed her badge. Her hand trembled as she pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open, mirroring her face back at her. She stepped inside, breathing slow, watching the numbers climb toward the executive floor. Every ding felt like a heartbeat. She had 5 minutes to decide if that kiss had been a mistake or the start of something that would change everything. The elevator doors slid open to the executive floor, and Amara stepped out trying to steady her breath. Every sound felt amplified. The clicking heels of assistants, the quiet hum of phones, the faint scent of cologne that still clung to her skin like proof. She walked past the glass offices, eyes straight ahead, pretending she didn't feel every glance that followed her. When she reached Malik's office, his assistant Keisha looked up from her desk. He's expecting you, she said, tone polite but curious, as if she already knew something had shifted in the air. Amara knocked once and stepped inside. Malik stood by the window, city stretching behind him in glittering layers of sun and steel. He didn't turn around right away. His reflection in the glass looked like a portrait, controlled, sharp, unshaken. Close the door, he said without looking. She did, pulse rising again. I owe you an apology, she started. He finally turned, eyes meeting hers. No, he said, voice calm but low. You owe yourself honesty, she hesitated. What do you want me to say? The truth, he said. Do you regret it? She froze. The kiss flashed in her mind. The warmth, the pull, the clarity he'd whispered afterward. I don't, she said quietly. Good, he said simply. Then let's talk about what happens next. What happens next? She repeated. We pretend it never happened. That's what people do, right? He smiled faintly. You're not most people. And you're my boss. For now, he said, stepping closer. But that can change. Her stomach flipped. You'd risk your position for me? He shook his head. No, I'd never risk your reputation for mine. But I won't pretend I didn't feel what I felt. Amara's heart thudded. You can't just decide that. I already have, he said. The only question is whether you want to walk away or see where this goes. She tried to laugh it off, but it came out shaky. This is insane. You barely know me. I know how you look when you're caught off guard, he said. I know you're smart enough to challenge me in meetings and kind enough to make everyone around you feel seen. I've known that for months. I just didn't know what to do with it until today. Her throat tightened. You were watching me? Not in the way you think, he said. In the way a man notices something that pulls him in even when he knows he shouldn't. She looked away, out at the skyline. This can't happen. He stepped closer, voice lower now. Then why are you still standing here? The question landed hard. She wanted to say professionalism, boundaries, common sense, but none of it felt true. The air between them vibrated with everything unspoken. He came around his desk, closing the space until she could feel his presence again. Strong, but never forceful. Amara, he said, her name coming out like a promise. You can leave now and I'll never mention it again. Or you can stay and we'll figure out what this really is. Her hand tightened around her notebook. Her head said leave. Her body said stay. She didn't move. Malik's voice dropped softer than before. You're trembling. I'm trying not to, she said. Don't, he whispered. It's honest. The city outside blurred into color. His hand brushed hers, deliberate, grounding her. He didn't pull her closer, he waited. She looked up, met his eyes, and the quiet in the room turned into gravity. This is a terrible idea, she breathed. I've built a career on risk, he said. I'll take this one. Her pulse skipped. You're impossible. You're shaking because you feel it too, he said, barely above a whisper. For one long second they just stood there. suspended in something that felt like choice. Then the intercom buzzed, breaking it. "Mr. Westbrook, you're meeting with the board in 5, Keisha's voice announced. Malik exhaled, straightened his jacket, the CEO mask slipping back into place. "We'll talk later," he said, quiet but certain. Amara forced a breath. "No, we won't." "Yes, we will," he said without turning as he walked toward the door. "Because neither of us is done." She stood there after he left, staring at the empty space he'd filled, heart still racing. She pressed her hand to her chest like it might stop the pounding. Then she looked at his chair, at the city behind it, at the reflection of her own conflicted face in the glass. Something had already started, and she knew it wasn't ending here. The afternoon stretched longer than usual, every clock hand in Peachtree Tower ticking louder in Amara's ears. She tried to drown herself in spreadsheets, branding reports, anything that wasn't the memory of Malik's breath against her skin. But every time the elevator chimed, her pulse jumped. It was unbearable. She told herself she was fine, that one reckless moment didn't define her. Still, she couldn't forget the way he'd said "my office," 5 minutes, and how she'd gone. By 4 p.m., her inbox blinked. Meeting, M. Westbrook, private. No subject line, no agenda. Just now her throat tightened. She stood, adjusted her blazer, and walked toward the executive wing. Every step echoed too loudly. Keisha wasn't at her desk this time. The glass door was half open. Malik was inside, sitting at his desk. Jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled high, forearms taut over a tablet glowing with numbers. He didn't look up right away. "Close the door, Amara," she did. "If this is about earlier, it is," he said. "Sit," she sat. Her heart hammered like she'd run up 10 flights. He studied her quietly, then spoke. "I can't stop thinking about that moment, and I need to understand what it was to you." She met his gaze, steady this time. "It was a mistake that felt right," she said. He nodded slowly. "That's the problem. It felt right to me, too." He rose, came around the desk, and leaned against its edge, close but not enough to touch. "I built this company on control. No distractions, no slip-ups. But when you looked at me this morning, I forgot how to breathe." Amara swallowed hard. "You can't say things like that. Why not?" "Because I'm your boss?" "Yes," she said, voice shaking. "Because this isn't fair." He tilted his head. "Then tell me to stop. Tell me to forget it." "I can't," she whispered. "But we can't do this." He stepped closer and she felt the warmth roll off him, the quiet pull that made words useless. "Do you know what drives me crazy?" he asked. "You pretend to be calm, but you shake when I get near you. You look away like you're scared, but you never leave the room." She stood abruptly. "Because I'm trying to hold on to what's left of my sense." "Then don't hold it," he said. "Let it go. Malik." "Say my name like that again," he said softly. "You sound like a promise." She froze, breath caught between fear and want. He took one more step, eyes locked on hers. "We can walk out right now and never talk about this again," he said. "Or we can admit it's already happening." Her heart raced. "If I stay, we cross a line we can't uncross." "Then stay," he said simply. "And let's find out if it's worth it." Before she could answer, the door burst open. Keisha, eyes wide. "Sorry, sir, but the investor call..." She stopped mid-sentence, taking in the distance between them, the charged silence. "Oh, I didn't realize..." Malik straightened instantly. "It's fine, Keisha. I'll join in 5. Yes, sir." She disappeared fast, closing the door behind her. The air between them burned. "That's exactly why we can't," Amara said. "People notice things." "Let them," Malik said. "I'll handle the consequences." "I'm not a risk you can manage," she said. "I'm a person who could lose everything." His tone softened. "I'd never let that happen." "Then prove it," she said. "By not touching me again." He looked at her for a long moment, then stepped back, hands sliding into his pockets, jaw tight with restraint. "You're right. We need boundaries." "Finally," she said, exhaling. "I'll send you the details for the Miami conference," he said, shifting back to business mode. "You'll be joining me," she blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're the only one who understands the new branding deal," he said. "It's strictly professional." Her heartbeat stumbled. "You really think flying to Miami with you is a good idea?" "I think avoiding what's inevitable isn't," he said, and turned back to his desk. Amara stood there, dizzy with mixed fury and desire. "You're unbelievable." He smiled faintly without looking up. "So I've been told." She left the office with her head high, ignoring every curious glance on the way back to her department. When she sat down, Tasha leaned over her cubicle. "Girl, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Amara muttered. "I just agreed to fly to Miami with one." Tasha's eyes widened. "Oh no, the boss?" Amara pressed a hand to her forehead. "It's just business," Tasha grinned. "You keep telling yourself that, honey." Amara stared at her screen, but her mind was far from numbers and reports. She could still taste mint and trouble on her lips. The line had already been crossed, it just hadn't caught up to them yet. The jet taxied down the Atlanta runway under a pale gold sky. Amara sat across from Malik in the company's private cabin, pretending to read a marketing brief. He looked out the window, sleeves rolled, phone dark in his hand. Every few seconds she felt his eyes flick to her, a quiet gravity pulling even when neither spoke. When the wheels lifted, she exhaled slow, as if she'd been holding her breath since the elevator yesterday. 2 hours later, the skyline of Miami shimmered like it had been dipped in glass. Heat rolled through the jet bridge as they stepped out. Malik walked ahead, phone pressed to his ear, giving orders in a voice that cut through noise like silk through paper. The hotel car waited, sleek, black, silent. She followed, trying not to think about how close he'd been on that plane or how his cologne still lingered in the air conditioning. At the Brickell Grand, cameras flashed as they entered the lobby, investors, executives, local press. The event that night was the company's biggest product launch of the quarter, and Malik Westbrook was the face of it all. Inside the elevator, mirrored walls threw their reflections back at them. Her beige business dress, his navy suit, the line of tension between them too visible to hide. In her room, Amara stared at her reflection. "Professional," she muttered, brushing her hair back, sliding on the lanyard with her ID. She could play this part. She would. At 7, the ballroom buzzed with light and champagne. Malik was already on stage, greeting investors with a handshake that looked like ownership. His speech rolled out smooth. Vision, innovation, community, all the right corporate poetry. But Amara could hear the pulse beneath it, a quiet awareness that he knew she was somewhere in the crowd watching. When the applause broke, he came down into the crowd. People swarmed him, asking questions, wanting pictures. He smiled, answered, charmed. But when his gaze found hers, the noise dropped away. He moved through people as if the space obeyed him, stopping just close enough to be noticed. "Ms. Blake," he said in that neutral CEO tone, "you handled the branding adjustments perfectly. You saved us tonight." "Just doing my job," she said, keeping her smile fixed. "You do it better than anyone else." He offered a glass of sparkling water. "Drink. You look like you've been holding your breath all day." "Maybe because my boss keeps surprising me," she said quietly. "Then let me surprise you again," he murmured, eyes never leaving hers. "Dance with me." Before she could argue, the band shifted to a low jazz rhythm and his hand was already extended. She hesitated a heartbeat, then took it, because saying no would have been the bigger lie. He led her to the floor, one hand settling at the small of her back, the other guiding her palm to his chest. The movement was precise, contained, but the current beneath it was pure electricity. "Everyone's watching," she whispered. "They'd have to be blind not to," he said. "Malik, relax, Amara. We're networking." The word sounded wrong wrapped around that tone. He twirled her once, slow and deliberate, and she laughed despite herself. The laugh made him smile, real this time, breaking through the mask of the executive. When the song ended, applause scattered across the room. He leaned in, breath warm against her ear. "Meet me on the terrace after this." 10 minutes. Then he was gone, swallowed back into the crowd, shaking hands with board members like nothing had happened. She stood still, champagne in hand, pretending to chat with another manager while her pulse thundered. 10 minutes later, she slipped through the glass doors onto the terrace. Miami glittered below. Neon, heat, ocean air heavy with salt and risk. Malik was there, leaning against the railing, tie loosened, city light cutting silver across his face. "You shouldn't be out here," she said, trying to sound calm. "I should be exactly where I want to be," he replied. "And right now that's here." He turned, the noise of the ballroom fading behind the glass. "You were incredible in there. I watched the way you handled those investors. You command a room without raising your voice." "That's supposed to be your line," she said. "It's the truth," he said. "I've met 100 people who talk about power. You just have it." She looked away toward the ocean, "And yet you keep risking yours." He stepped closer until the breeze pulled the space between them thin. You think I don't know what this could cost me? I think you don't care, she said softly. You're wrong, he said. I care too much. For a long second, they stood facing each other in the warm wind, city noise below like a heartbeat. His eyes searched hers for permission he didn't ask for outright. She could have turned. She didn't. When he kissed her this time, there was no hesitation, no caution, only the quiet certainty of two people who had already fallen past the point of pretending. The taste of salt, the faint roar of the city, his hand at the back of her neck pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, fierce but still gentle, ending only when they both needed air. He rested his forehead against hers, voice low. You know this isn't a game anymore. I never thought it was, she whispered, then stopped fighting it. Tell me how. He smiled faintly. Come with me tomorrow. We'll talk over breakfast. No business. Just you and me. She should have said no. Instead, she nodded. Later, in her room, she leaned against the door and tried to breathe. The city lights spilled across her bed. Her phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. Malik W., 7 a.m. Ocean Cafe. No suits. No titles. She stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Knowing that she'd already crossed the line, she swore she never would. Morning sun painted Miami gold when Amara stepped into the Ocean Cafe. The breeze from the bay carried salt and espresso. Malik was already there, sitting at an outdoor table. No suit, no tie, just a white shirt open at the throat, sleeves rolled. A man who had stepped out of his armor. He stood as she approached, smile quick and quiet. You came. I said I would. I wasn't sure. I wasn't either, she said, taking a seat across from him. He poured her coffee like it was a small ceremony. You do realize this is reckless, she said. He nodded. Probably the first honest thing I've done in a while. They talked for an hour about everything but work, music, family, how he grew up in Charlotte fixing broken radios, how she spent college nights sketching ed concepts in cheap notebooks. With each story, the distance between them shrank. By the time they finished breakfast, the line that had once seemed impossible to cross felt invisible. The conference ended late that afternoon. The Miami air turned heavy with thunderclouds, the ballroom buzzing with last-minute goodbyes. Amara was exhausted but glowing. Her presentation had been a success. Malik stayed close but never too close, a silent orbit. When the crowd thinned, he caught her eye and nodded toward the elevators. Ride up with me, he said quietly. The hall was empty except for their footsteps. Inside the elevator, mirrored walls reflected everything they hadn't said. She pressed the button for her floor. He pressed nothing. The doors closed, sealing them in that soft hum of electric silence. Neither spoke, but the air between them thickened. Amara turned slightly, caught his reflection watching her. His jaw was tight, restraint visible. Malik, she said. But his name came out as a whisper. He moved closer until she could feel the warmth of him through her dress. You keep saying my name like that, he murmured. And you expect me to stand still? Her heartbeat stuttered. You can't. Someone could. There's no one here, he said, voice low. Just us. The elevator jolted softly as it passed another floor. He lifted his hand, brushed a curl from her face, fingers tracing her cheek like he was memorizing the shape of a decision. The look in his eyes asked, not demanded. Tell me to stop, he whispered. She didn't. He kissed her, slow at first, then deeper as the elevator climbed. The city fell away, and all that existed was the taste of him, warm, certain, dangerous in its honesty. Her hands found his shoulders. His fingers slid to the small of her back, drawing her closer until there was no space left to hide behind. When the elevator dinged, they broke apart, breathing hard, eyes still locked. The doors opened on her floor. No one was there. Your room, he said softly. She should have said no. She didn't. The hallway blurred as they walked. Inside, the room glowed with amber light from the city. The moment the door closed, everything they'd been holding back crashed through. His jacket hit the chair, her hands tangled in his shirt. His lips found her neck. It wasn't rough, it wasn't gentle. It was real. A storm that had been gathering for weeks. He lifted her, set her down against the window, the city lights burning behind them like witnesses. She could feel every heartbeat, every breath, every word unspoken. You still think this is a mistake? He asked between kisses. Yes, she whispered. A beautiful one. Hours blurred into the rhythm of rain tapping the glass, their voices lost between laughter and quiet confession. He was careful, always asking, always giving her the space to choose. And she chose him again and again until dawn bled pale into the skyline. When she woke, sunlight spilled across the sheets. Malik stood near the balcony, shirt unbuttoned, coffee in hand, watching the horizon like a man who'd finally stopped running. "You don't regret it," he said. "Not a question." She shook her head. "Do you?" He turned, eyes soft. "No, but I'm not naive. This changes everything." She pulled the sheet around her, smiling faintly. Then maybe everything needed to change. He crossed the room, leaned down, kissed her forehead. "Then we start new rules, boundaries, transparency, no secrets." She smiled up at him. "And if that doesn't work?" He grinned. "Then we make new ones again until it does." For a moment, silence held them, the kind that wasn't empty but full of meaning. He straightened, reached for his jacket. "Flight leaves at noon. I'll see you downstairs." When he left, Amara sank back against the pillows. Her body was still humming with the memory of him, but her mind was already racing ahead, to the office, to the rumors, to what came next. She looked out at the ocean, endless and blinding under the sun, and whispered to herself, "You've done it now." Because the truth wasn't just that she had crossed a line, it was that she didn't want to go back. The flight back to Atlanta was quiet. Malik worked through emails with headphones on, while Amara stared out the window, watching the clouds drift below like a soft warning. The night in Miami replayed in her mind over and over, every glance, every word, every touch, and yet now there was silence between them. The kind that comes not from distance but from knowing too much. When the jet landed, the world seemed colder. Atlanta's skyline glowed faintly against a pale gray sky, the kind of day that felt like consequence. As they stepped off the plane, Malik said only, "Cars outside." She nodded and followed. The ride to the office was a blur of city noise and restrained breathing. His phone buzzed nonstop, calls, meetings, investors, but he ignored most of them. She kept her hands folded in her lap, staring at the skyline and wondering how long a secret could stay beautiful before it turned dangerous. At Peachtree Tower, they exited the elevator on different floors. No goodbye, no glance. The door closed between them like punctuation. Inside her office, Tasha was waiting, sipping iced coffee and looking like curiosity personified. "So," she said, "how was Miami?" Amara sat down, pretending to dig through her bag. "Work, long hours, heat." You come back looking like someone who didn't sleep." Tasha smirked. "That boss of yours didn't give you a hard time, did he?" Amara's heart stuttered. "You have no idea." Before Tasha could pry further, her phone buzzed. "Message, Malik Westbrook. My office now." She typed back. "Busy." Reply came instantly. "Make time." She stared at the screen, then exhaled sharply. "I'll be back," she told Tasha, grabbing her tablet. When she entered his office, Malik was standing by the window again, jacket off, tie loosened. He didn't look up right away. "Close the door," he said. She did. "We need to talk about what happens next," he said, turning finally. "Because I can't pretend last night didn't happen." She crossed her arms. "Neither can I, but pretending might save us both." He shook his head. "No, I've spent my whole career pretending. I'm done with that. Malik, this isn't just about you. I work for you. There are rules." "Then I'll change the rules," he interrupted. "You think I can't?" "That's not the point," she said, frustration breaking through. "I don't want to be your scandal. I don't want people whispering that I got here because of you." His eyes softened. "You didn't get here because of me. You're the reason this company's rebranding didn't fall apart last quarter. You're here because you're exceptional." "Then don't make me a headline," she said quietly. He walked closer, stopping just shy of her space. "Then tell me what to do." "Do I ignore what I feel?" "Because I've tried. It doesn't work." She looked away, jaw tight. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Maybe it's supposed to be hard," he said. "Maybe that's how we know it's real." For a long second, the silence pulsed between them. Outside, rain began tapping against the glass. Finally, she said, "You want to do this the right way? Then you transfer me. Different department. Different reporting line. You remove every reason anyone could question me." He nodded slowly. "That's fair. I'll still do my job, I'll still give everything I've got, but it has to be on equal ground." He reached into his drawer, pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Already started the paperwork. Her eyes flicked to it. You planned this? I anticipated you would ask, he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. You're predictable in the best way. She sighed, torn between admiration and exhaustion. You think this fixes everything? No, he said. But it's a start. She sat down across from him. The tension between them softer now, more human. So what, we just wait it out? We work, we rebuild. We learn to see if what happened in Miami was just heat or something worth keeping. Her voice dropped. And if it was worth keeping? He smiled faintly. Then I'll make sure it lasts. The rain outside grew heavier. Amara looked at him, really looked, and saw not the billionaire CEO but the man beneath the armor, uncertain but sincere. You're not used to losing control, are you? She said. He chuckled quietly. I'm learning to enjoy it. She stood, smoothing her skirt. Then start by following one of my rules. Which one? She met his gaze, eyes steady. Don't call me to your office unless it's about work. He nodded slowly as though committing it to memory. Deal. She turned to leave, and just before she reached the door, he said softly, Amara? She paused. I meant what I said. This isn't temporary. Her hand lingered on the doorknob, her heart louder than the rain. We'll see. When she stepped into the hallway, she realized the air felt different, lighter, uncertain, alive. Whatever this was, it wasn't ending here. It was only changing shape. 3 weeks later, Amara's desk sat 1 floor lower and 2 departments away from Malik's. The transfer had gone through quietly, officially labeled as strategic restructuring. HR had made her sign 3 new forms, 1 confidentiality agreement and a code of conduct reminder she already knew by heart. Everyone congratulated her on her promotion, though she noticed the curious glances that followed her down the hall. Tasha was the only one who saw through it. New office, same boss's orbit, she teased, leaning on the cubicle wall. Amara didn't look up from her monitor. It's different now, You keep saying that like it's a prayer. It was different. Malik had made it so. Meetings were professional. Emails polite. Public distance became their unspoken rule. But the quiet between them held something new. Understanding, not denial. When he passed her in the hallway, he only nodded. When she joined strategy sessions, he praised her work in front of others, never lingering too long on her name. But late at night, when the office lights dimmed and most had gone home, her phone would buzz. Malik, still awake? Amara, barely. Malik, dinner? Neutral ground. No company cars. Amara, you mean a date? Malik, if you want to call it that. Amara, then yes. Their first date wasn't a grand affair. A small jazz restaurant tucked between Peachtree and Auburn. Low lights, live trumpet. Malik arrived in a simple black shirt. No trace of the CEO image, just a man who finally looked free. When the waiter left, Amara leaned forward, chin resting on her hand. So what do we talk about when it's not work? He smiled. Anything that reminds me I'm human. They talked until the candles melted low. Books, music, the worst jobs they ever had. She learned he hated arrogance, loved blues guitar, and once burned an entire kitchen trying to cook for someone he cared about. He learned she collected art from street vendors and painted small canvases when she couldn't sleep. The conversation stretched past midnight, and when he walked her to her car, he didn't rush. He brushed a curl from her cheek and said softly, "We can make this work." She looked up, heart caught in her throat. "Then promise we won't let work ruin it." "Deal," he said, and kissed her, slow and careful, as if testing the new shape of their world. Over the next months, they built something that lived between reality and secrecy. They met for late dinners, drove through the city at midnight with jazz humming low, and spent Sundays at the botanical garden when no one from the office would be there. He listened when she talked about her family in Savannah, and she listened when he spoke about the pressure of always being perfect. They learned to laugh again, freely, quietly, like the weight of expectation had finally lifted. At work, Amara thrived. Her campaign numbers soared, her presentations grew sharper, her confidence louder. Malik never interfered, never used his power to shield her. If anything, he pushed her harder, always reminding her, "You don't need my name to succeed." Their connection deepened quietly, behind careful smiles and separate exits. It wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about protecting something real before the world could name it and ruin it. One Friday night, after another long week, She found him waiting outside her building in his car. "You stalking me now?" she teased, sliding into the passenger seat. "Maybe I missed you," he said. "You saw me 5 hours ago. Doesn't count when it's work." She laughed. "You're impossible." He leaned closer, whispering, "You say that every time right before you let me in." That night, they didn't talk about business or boundaries. They drove aimlessly through the city lights, windows down, music low, fingers intertwined on the center console. At a red light, he glanced over and said, "You realize you've become the most dangerous thing in my life?" She smiled. "Because I could destroy you?" "Because you make me forget that I care if I'm destroyed." Her chest tightened. She reached across and kissed him, soft and sure. Weeks later, word spread quietly through the company that Malik Westbrook had stepped down from direct oversight of 3 departments, including hers. The official memo said leadership restructuring for better operational efficiency, but Amara knew the truth. He was freeing them both from the line that had haunted them since that first day in the break room. That night, he came to her apartment for dinner. No suits, no titles, no distance. He brought wine, she cooked, and for the first time they didn't have to look over their shoulders. When he raised his glass, his voice was low and steady. To finally doing this without hiding, she clinked her glass against his. To choosing each other anyway. They didn't say "I love you." They didn't need to. The way they looked at each other said everything. Spring came early that year, and Atlanta smelled like magnolias and new beginnings. Amara's days were filled with meetings, strategy decks, and late-night brainstorming sessions that no longer felt like a burden. Malik had become more of a shadow in the company, still the leader but quieter, content to let others shine. They saw each other less at work, but more outside of it, in stolen weekends and quiet dinners that stretched into dawn. One Friday evening, he told her to pack a bag. "Just overnight," he said with that familiar half-smile that always meant something bigger. "Where are we going?" she asked, slipping her laptop into her tote. "You'll see," he replied. "Trust me." A few hours later, they were driving down a winding coastal road, wind whipping through her curls, the smell of salt in the air. When they reached the small seaside town of Oak Bluffs, the sky was painted pink and gold. He stopped the car in front of a weathered beach house with white shutters and soft blue light glowing from inside. She turned to him, amused. "What is this?" "An overdue vacation," he said, stepping out. "And a conversation we should have had a long time ago." Inside, the place was cozy. Wooden floors, open windows, the sound of waves rolling steady in the distance. A dinner table was set for 2, simple but elegant. He'd cooked. Her eyes widened. "You, in a kitchen? This I have to see." "I've been practicing," he said with mock seriousness. "Don't insult the effort before tasting it." Dinner was clumsy but heartfelt. Grilled salmon slightly overdone, wine a bit too warm, laughter easy and unguarded. For once they weren't CEO and employee, just 2 people who had built something fragile and real between them. Afterward, he took her hand and led her outside. The night was quiet except for the ocean and the low hum of wind against the porch rail. The moon hung heavy above the water, casting silver over the waves. "Do you remember the first thing you ever said about me?" he asked. She laughed. "That you were hot but definitely gay?" "Exactly," he grinned. "You were wrong about one of those." "Which one?" she teased. He shook his head, smiling, then grew quiet. "I've spent my life chasing perfection. Every deal, every detail, every move calculated. But the only thing that's ever felt real, I was unpredictable. You?" Her heart stuttered. "Malik." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, simple and elegant like everything he did. "Before you say anything, just listen. I don't want to change you or fix you or own you. I just want to choose you. Every morning. Every argument. Every success. Even when we get it wrong." She froze. The sound of the waves swallowed the space between his words. "Amara Blake," he said softly, eyes never leaving hers. "Will you marry me?" The moment cracked open like light. Her breath caught. Her eyes filled, and every memory of their journey, the break room, the whispers, the risks, the laughter, rushed through her all at once. She nodded before she could even find her voice. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, laughing through the tears. "Yes," he exhaled, relieved and radiant, slipping the ring onto her finger. It wasn't huge or flashy, but it fit perfectly. Elegant, understated, meaningful. She looked down at it and smiled. You didn't need to go this far. I needed to go exactly this far, he said. No further, no less. He kissed her then, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for approval. It belonged there. The waves crashed, the wind shifted, and for once the world felt entirely still. Later, they sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, her head on his shoulder, the ring catching moonlight every time she moved. When did you decide? She asked. The night you told me to stop calling you to my office, he said with a small grin. You were the first person who ever told me no and meant it. I knew then I'd spend the rest of my life respecting you for it. She laughed quietly, pressing her lips to his neck. Guess I'm stuck with you now. He turned to her, eyes soft. You've never been stuck. You've always been free. You just chose to stay. And under that sky of salt and silver, freedom had never felt so much like home. Summer came wrapped in sunlight and promises. Word spread quietly among friends and a few trusted colleagues. Malik Westbrook and Amara Blake were getting married. There were no glossy magazines, no press announcements, no lavish ballroom affair, just a private invitation printed in gold letters that read, Oak Bluffs, by the sea. On the morning of the wedding, the island air was soft and heavy with salt. The beach had been cleared except for a wooden arch draped in white silk, a row of chairs, and the sound of waves rolling in steady rhythm. Amara stood inside the cottage, surrounded by soft laughter and the scent of jasmine. Tasha helped fasten the last button on her dress. Girl, you look like grace itself, Tasha said, blinking back tears. Amara smiled, her voice barely a whisper. I can't believe it's happening. Oh, it's happening, Tasha said, handing her the bouquet. And he's out there looking like a man about to give the ocean competition. Outside, Malik waited barefoot on the sand, wearing an open white shirt and linen trousers, the ocean light catching in his dark eyes. When the music began, a soft, slow piano, the world seemed to fall silent. Amara stepped out, the train of her gown brushing the sand, the sea breeze curling through her hair. Every step felt like a story closing and another beginning. When she reached him, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath his whole life. The officiant smiled. We are gathered here not to make something new, but to honor what already exists. Malik took her hands. You changed everything I thought I knew about control, he said. You made chaos feel like peace. You made risk feel like purpose. I can't promise perfection, but I promise presence. Every single day. Tears caught in her lashes. You made me believe love doesn't need to be quiet to be real, she said. I don't need safe anymore. I just need you. The ocean wind rose as if applauding. When they kissed, the crowd cheered softly and Tasha yelled, Finally! Everyone laughed and the sound carried out over the water. That evening, under lanterns strung between palm trees, they danced barefoot on the sand. Malik twirled her once, twice, then pulled her close, whispering, We made it. She smiled against his chest. We're just starting. The next morning, a private jet waited on the runway, sunlight flashing off its wings. The honeymoon wasn't about luxury, it was about quiet. Paris first, where they walked along the Seine at dawn with coffee in hand. No bodyguards, no titles. Then Tuscany, where he read to her from a book of poetry he'd bought at a street stall. Venice followed. Gondolas, soft laughter, the scent of rain on stone. Finally, Santorini, white rooftops burning bright against the Aegean blue. Each place felt like a version of forever. They took photos only for themselves. Her head on his shoulder in front of the Eiffel Tower, his hand tracing her ring under the Greek sun. One night in Santorini, they sat on a terrace overlooking the sea, the sky deep purple. You ever think about what comes next? She asked. He nodded. Every day. But I stopped trying to plan it. The best things I've ever had came when I stopped controlling everything. You sound like a man who's finally at peace, she said. He smiled faintly. I am, because I'm not chasing anymore. He leaned over, kissed her temple, and they watched the horizon blur into stars. Days melted into nights, and nights into memory. By the time they flew home, they had learned the shape of each other's silence, the rhythm of belonging. Atlanta welcomed them back with the hum of traffic and the promise of ordinary life. But ordinary to them had never sounded so extraordinary. The years didn't rush. They unfolded. Quietly, patiently, like the tide returning to the same shore again and again. Amara and Malik moved into a brownstone near Piedmont Park, sunlight streaming through tall windows every morning. Their life together wasn't a movie montage of champagne and travel anymore. It was Sunday pancakes, coffee, and mismatched mugs, jazz humming from a speaker that sometimes crackled. It was her sketching ad ideas at the dining table, while he typed on his laptop beside her. It was shared silence that needed no explanation. At work, they rebuilt the company in a new shape, transparent, fair, and creative. Amara rose quickly, not because she was the CEO's wife, but because her ideas worked. Malik stayed mostly behind the curtain, mentoring, investing, teaching others how to lead without fear. The whispers that had once followed them faded into admiration. People began to say they changed the culture. They didn't correct them. They just kept building. Every evening when he came home, he'd kiss her forehead before saying a word. "Long day?" she'd ask. "Worth it," he'd answer. There were fights, of course, overtime, exhaustion, the endless balance between love and ambition. Once, during a particularly long week, she had thrown her planner on the couch and said, "You promised me peace." He'd pulled her into his arms and murmured, "No, I promised you partnership." "Peace we'll have to earn every day," she'd sighed, laughed, kissed him back, and the world had reset again. On weekends, they escaped the noise, sometimes to a cabin by Lake Lanier, sometimes just a drive with no destination. They never needed much. They'd learned that love wasn't built in grand gestures. It lived in the small ones, refilling each other's coffee, remembering how the other liked their music, whispering, "I'm proud of you," before a big meeting. 5 years later, they returned to Oak Bluffs, the same beach where they'd said yes. The air smelled exactly as it had that day, salt, sun, and something eternal. Malik carried a picnic basket, Amara a sketchbook. They spread a blanket near the water and watched the waves crawl toward them. "Do you ever think about how it started?" she asked, smiling at the memory. "You, me, that break room disaster," he laughed. "You called me gay. You locked the door. You kissed me back." They both laughed until tears filled their eyes. The past didn't sting anymore, it glowed. It was part of them, woven into every choice that followed. He reached into the basket, pulled out a small velvet box. "Before you panic," he said, grinning. "It's not a new ring." Inside was a simple gold bracelet engraved with a single word: clarity. She traced the letters with her finger, the same word he'd whispered the first time he kissed her. "You still remember that?" "I never forgot it," he said. "It was the moment I realized you'd change everything." She leaned in, resting her head against his shoulder. "You still terrify me, you know." "Good," he murmured. "Keeps me sharp." The sun began to fall into the horizon, setting the water on fire. Seagulls wheeled overhead, and the sound of the waves was steady and familiar. Amara smiled. "You know what's funny? Everyone told me falling in love with you was a mistake." "And were they right?" he asked. She looked out at the water, eyes shining. "Maybe. But it was the only mistake I'd make again." He laughed quietly, kissed the top of her head, and together they watched the light fade. As night settled, he whispered, "I think we finally figured it out." She smiled against his chest. "No," she said softly. "We just finally stopped trying to." And under that slow, endless rhythm of ocean and wind, Amara Blake and Malik Westbrook stayed exactly where they'd always belonged, in the clarity they had built, in the chaos they had chosen, and in the love that had never once asked for permission to exist.